Alastair Finch owns this room. He does not merely work in it, he possesses it. The courtroom is an extension of his will, a theater where he is the sole writer, director, and star. The air, thick with the scent of old paper and fear, bends to his presence. The polished wood of the prosecutor's table gleams under the fluorescent lights, a dark mirror reflecting a man carved from granite and prejudice. His suit is a masterpiece of charcoal gray tailoring, a sheath of armor that costs more than the public defender will make in 3 months. His hair is a perfect silver helmet, unbreached by a single errant strand. When he stands, it is not a movement but an event, a shift in the room's center of gravity. Today, he feels the familiar thrum of power, a low, satisfying hum in his veins. It is the drug he has chased his entire life, from the manicured lawns of his Ivy League law school to this provincial kingdom he now rules with an iron gavel, wielded by a judge who owes him everything. His eyes, the color of a winter sky, sweep across the gallery. He sees the usual collection of human refuse. The worried families, the bored reporters from the local paper, the other bottom-feeding lawyers waiting for their turn at the trough. They are scenery. Props in his play. Then, his gaze lands on the defendant's table. And Alastair Finch smiles. It is a predator's smile, thin and bloodless. The target for today's performance is perfect. His name is Marcus Thorne. He is a young black man, swimming in a cheap suit the color of mud. The jacket is too tight across the shoulders, the trousers a fraction too short, revealing mismatched socks. He sits with a stillness that Finch mistakes for stupidity, for the dull resignation of the guilty. The public defender beside him, Sarah Jenkins, is even better. She is young, earnest, and drowning. Her notes are a disorganized flurry of paper, her face pale with the sheer, overwhelming stress of facing Alastair Finch. She is a lamb, and Finch is a wolf who enjoys playing with his food. But it is not the man's ill-fitting suit or his lawyer's incompetence that draws Finch's focus. It is the small, metallic object pinned to the man's lapel. A medal. It is ornate, a silver cross hanging from a blue and white ribbon. It catches the light, a single point of defiance in the defendant's otherwise drab presentation. Finch feels a surge of contempt so pure it is almost exhilarating. Stolen valor. The ultimate insult. A pathetic attempt to garner sympathy from a jury that Finch would never allow to be seated anyway. This creature, this piece of street trash scooped up on a trumped-up loitering charge, a charge Finch himself had encouraged the police to pursue with more vigor, daring to wear a symbol of honor. The judge, a bloated and compliant man named Wallace, drones on, calling the court to order. His voice is a meaningless buzz in the background of Finch's rising indignation. The people versus Marcus Thorne, Judge Wallace mumbles, peering over his spectacles. Finch rises. The room holds its breath. Your Honor, he begins, his voice a resonant baritone that commands attention. Before we proceed with the tedious formalities of this case, I feel compelled to address a matter of profound disrespect to this court, and indeed, to this nation. He lets the words hang in the air, a baited hook. He turns, slowly, and points a perfectly manicured finger at Marcus Thorne. I am referring, he says, his voice dripping with theatrical disdain, to the decoration. Sarah Jenkins flinches. She half rises from her seat. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is testifying. And his tone is. Sit down, Miss Jenkins, Judge Wallace sighs, not even looking at her. Let the men speak. Finch's smile widens. The judge is a well-trained pet. He walks, prowls, from his table toward the defendant. He circles Marcus Thorne like a shark. Thorne does not move. He does not even look at Finch. His eyes are fixed on the flag hanging limp behind the judge's bench. His posture is rigid, his hands resting calmly on the table before him. A military medal, Finch sneers, stopping directly in front of Thorne. He leans in, close enough to see the faint scar above the young man's eyebrow. How aspirational. The gallery murmurs. This is the show they came for. I wonder, Finch continues, his voice loud enough for every person in the room to hear, what flea market you purchased that little trinket from. Or perhaps it fell off a cereal box. Tell me, Mr. Thorne, what great act of heroism did you perform to earn such an esteemed award? Did you bravely navigate a grocery aisle? Did you valiantly jaywalk across a busy street? Laughter, sycophantic and cruel, ripples from the corner where Finch's junior associates sit. Sarah Jenkins is on her feet again, her voice trembling with outrage. Your Honor, this is outrageous. He is mocking my client. This has nothing to do with the case. On the contrary, Miss Jenkins, Finch counters smoothly, turning to face her. It has everything to do with the case. The case is about character. And a man who would wear a fake medal, a man who would steal the honor of real soldiers to curry favor in a court of law, is a man of no character whatsoever. He is a liar. A fraud. You have no proof that it's fake, she retorts, her voice cracking. Finch lets out a short, barking laugh. Proof? My dear woman, look at him, he gestures dismissively at Marcus Thorne. He is a child. A street tough picked up for vagrancy. The odds of him having legitimately earned a medal of that apparent significance are astronomical. It is an insult to every man and woman who has ever worn the uniform of this country. He turns his attention back to Thorne, his voice hardening into a whip. Look at me when I'm speaking to you, boy. Thorne's eyes slowly shift from the flag and meet Finch's gaze. There is no fear in them. There is nothing. A calm, deep, and unnerving stillness that infuriates Finch more than any defiance could. It is like looking into the ocean. I am ordering you, Finch says, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, to remove that piece of tin from your jacket. You will not make a mockery of this courtroom or the heroes of this nation. Take it off. Now. This is the moment. The peak of the humiliation. Finch can feel the collective gaze of the room, rapt. He is demonstrating his power, showing them all that he can not only prosecute a man but strip him of his dignity, piece by piece, right here in the open. Thorne's hands do not move. His expression does not change. He simply holds Finch's gaze. He doesn't have to do that, Sarah Jenkins says, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. There is no legal basis for such a demand. I am making it the basis, Finch roars, his composure finally cracking. He slams his hand down on the defendant's table. The sound echoes like a gunshot. He will show this court the respect it is due. Or I will ask His Honor to hold him in contempt for so long his head spins. Maximum sentence for the loitering charge, another 6 months for contempt. Is that what you want, Mr. Thorne? Do you want to find out just how long you can rot in a cell over a cheap, fake medal? The threat hangs in the air, thick and ugly. The room is silent. The air crackles with tension. This has gone beyond legal proceeding. It is a public flogging. Thorne's jaw tightens. Just a fraction. A flicker of something in those deep, calm eyes. A storm far out at sea. He still says nothing. Finch feels a flush of victory. He has broken him. The silence is surrender. He turns to the judge. Your Honor, the defendant refuses to comply with a direct order concerning decorum in your courtroom. I move for contempt. Judge Wallace nods, a puppet on a string. So moved. Mr. Thorne, for the last time, I am ordering you to remove the boom. The sound is not a gavel. It is not a shout. It is the sound of the heavy, oak doors at the back of the courtroom being thrown open with such force that they slam against the marble walls. Every head in the room whips around. Framed in the doorway are two figures. They are United States Army military police. Their dress uniforms are immaculate, razor-creased, their white gloves stark against the dark green fabric. They stand at perfect attention, their faces impassive, their presence an immediate and shocking intrusion of federal authority into this small, grubby local court. Between them, a woman steps through. She is not in uniform. She wears a navy blue suit of such severe and perfect tailoring that it makes Alastair Finch's expensive outfit look like a rumpled sack. Her hair is pulled back in a tight, elegant bun. She carries a leather portfolio under one arm. She radiates an aura of power so potent, so absolute, that the very air in the room seems to thin, to grow cold. She begins to walk down the central aisle. Her heels click on the marble floor, each step a precise, percussive indictment. The sound is deafening in the sudden, tomb-like silence. Alastair Finch stares, his mouth slightly agape. Who is this woman? What is the meaning of this theatrical interruption? What is the meaning of this? Judge Wallace sputters, finding his voice. This is a court of law. You cannot just. The woman does not stop walking. She does not even glance at the judge. Her eyes, a piercing, intelligent blue, are fixed on one person and one person only. Alastair Finch. She comes to a stop just behind the prosecutor's table. She places her portfolio down with a soft, definitive thud. "Prosecutor Alastair Finch," she says. Her voice is not loud, but it cuts through the silence like a surgeon's scalpel. It is calm, controlled, and utterly lethal. Finch, thrown off balance, reverts to his default setting, arrogance. "I am in the middle of a proceeding. Whoever you are, you will wait outside. Sergeant at Arms, remove this woman." The balding, overweight bailiff takes a hesitant step forward, then stops, frozen by the sheer intensity of the woman's gaze. She ignores the bailiff completely. "My name is Eleanor Vance," she says, her voice dropping a degree colder. "I am the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. And you, Mr. Finch, are in a great deal of trouble." The title hangs in the air, a stunning explosion of rank and power. Undersecretary of Defense. A name that belongs in Washington, in the Pentagon, not here. Finch's mind struggles to process it. A wave of cold dread begins to creep up his spine. And furthermore, Undersecretary Vance continues, her eyes flicking for a brief moment to the defendant's table, "You will cease your harassment of a decorated American hero. You will address that man not as boy or Mr. Thorne, but by his proper title." She pauses, letting the weight of her next words settle on the room like a shroud. "You will address him as Sergeant Major Marcus Thorne." A collective gasp ripples through the courtroom. Sergeant Major. A senior noncommissioned officer. A rank achieved through decades of service, leadership, and sacrifice. It is a rank of profound respect within the armed forces. It is utterly incongruous with the image of the young man in the cheap suit. Finch's face, which had been flushed with righteous fury moments before, drains of all color. He looks from the impossibly powerful woman to the silent defendant. He sees the stillness in the young man's eyes not as stupidity anymore, but as discipline. The rigid posture not as fear, but as training. The world tilts on its axis. "Sergeant. Major." Finch stammers, the word catching in his throat. It sounds absurd. A lie. That's impossible. He's too young." "Is he?" Vance asks, a dangerous glint in her eye. She opens her portfolio. "Sergeant Major Thorne enlisted at 17, with parental consent. He has served for 15 years in the United States Army Rangers. 3 tours in Afghanistan. 2 in Iraq. He is a master of 6 different martial arts, a decorated sniper, and one of the most respected NCOs in the entire Special Operations community." She pulls out a document, a single sheet of paper, and holds it up. "As for the trinket on his lapel," she says, her voice laced with ice, "the fake medal you so publicly derided." She looks directly at Finch, her eyes burning with a cold fire. "That is the Distinguished Service Cross." The name of the medal drops into the room like a thunderclap. The second highest military award for valor in the entire United States Army. Awarded for extraordinary heroism in combat. A medal so rare, so revered, that most soldiers go their entire careers without ever seeing one in person. Finch feels the floor drop out from under him. His legs feel weak. He grips the edge of his table for support. "You demanded to know what heroic act he performed to earn it," Vance continues, her voice a relentless, punishing cadence. "I believe this court, and the public record, deserve an answer." She does not look at her papers. She knows the story by heart. On May 12, 2018, outside Kandahar, then Master Sergeant Thorne's platoon was ambushed. They were pinned down in a dried riverbed by heavy machine gun fire from a fortified position. 2 men were hit in the initial volley, critically wounded and exposed in the open. The platoon was trapped, unable to advance or retreat. The air support was 10 minutes out. They had seconds. The courtroom is utterly silent. The story unfolds, painting a picture of dust and blood and terror that feels a universe away from this sterile, quiet room. "Without orders," Vance says, her voice ringing with the gravity of the events she describes, "without regard for his own life, Master Sergeant Thorne left his covered position. He took with him only his rifle and 3 smoke grenades. He charged the enemy position. Alone." She takes a step toward the jury box, though it is empty, as if addressing a higher authority. He ran 150 yards across open ground, under sustained, direct fire from at least a dozen enemy combatants. He laid down suppressive fire while moving, drawing the enemy's attention entirely onto himself, allowing his men to pull the two wounded soldiers back to safety. Witnesses stated the ground around him was being torn apart by bullets. Finch can feel sweat trickling down his back. He feels 100 pairs of eyes on him, judging him, condemning him. He reached the base of the enemy fortification, Vance goes on, her voice unwavering. He neutralized the 3 combatants in the forward trench. He then proceeded to single-handedly assault and clear the main bunker, which contained a heavy machine gun nest and 9 more enemy fighters. When he ran out of ammunition for his rifle, he used his sidearm. When he ran out of ammunition for his sidearm, he used his knife. And his hands. A wave of awe and horror passes through the gallery. Sarah Jenkins stares at her client, her mouth open, seeing him for the first time. Not as a victim, but as a legend. By the time his platoon reached the bunker, the threat was eliminated. He had saved the lives of his entire platoon, at the cost of 3 gunshot wounds and multiple shrapnel injuries. For this act of conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, the President of the United States awarded him the Distinguished Service Cross. Eleanor Vance slaps the commendation paper down on Finch's table. The sound is like a judgment. "That is the piece of tin you ordered him to remove," she says, her voice a low, deadly hiss. "That is the honor you mocked." Finch cannot speak. His throat is a desert. His carefully constructed world, his kingdom of words and power, is crumbling to dust around him. He looks at Sergeant Major Thorne, who still has not moved, who still has not spoken. The man's silence is no longer passive. It is a weapon. It is the profound, damning silence of a man who has faced down death and has no fear left for petty tyrants in expensive suits. "But this is not merely about your appalling ignorance and disrespect, Prosecutor," Vance says, her tone shifting from historical recitation to active threat. "This is about corruption." She turns to Judge Wallace, who looks as if he is about to have a heart attack. His face is a blotchy, purple mess. "Your Honor, I am here today not just as a representative of the Department of Defense, but as a courier for the Department of Justice. It seems that while Sergeant Major Thorne was serving his country overseas, certain elements in this city decided to make his family a target." She pulls another folder from her portfolio. It is thick. Sergeant Major Thorne returned home on emergency leave 2 weeks ago. His mother, a widow named Mary Thorne, was being evicted from her home of 40 years. The eviction was based on a sudden, massive property tax levy, pushed through by a city council with deep financial ties to a real estate developer. A developer who, it turns out, is a very close friend and golf partner of Prosecutor Finch. Finch's blood runs cold. It is true. All of it. He thought it was a simple, clean eminent domain squeeze. He never imagined the son of some old woman in a rundown neighborhood would be this. Sergeant Major Thorne began asking questions. Vance continues, her methodical dismantling of Finch's life picking up speed. He hired a local lawyer to look into the tax assessment. He spoke to his neighbors. He started making people nervous. And so, a plan was hatched. A way to discredit him. To silence him. She pulls out a small digital audio recorder and places it on the table. This is a recording of a phone call that took place 3 nights ago, between Prosecutor Finch and the Chief of Police, Frank O'Malley. Finch feels his stomach clench. He remembers the call. He had been drinking. He had been arrogant. Vance presses a button. Finch's own voice fills the courtroom, slurred and ugly. "Frank, we need to do something about this Thorne kid. He's stirring up trouble down in the Heights. Yeah, the soldier boy. Thinks he's some kind of hero. We need to jam him up. Find something. Anything. I don't care what. Loitering, resisting, jaywalking. Just get him off the street and into my courtroom. I'll make an example of him. I'll ruin him. By the time I'm done, nobody in that neighborhood will dare question a city hall notice again." There is a pause on the recording, and then Frank O'Malley's gravelly voice responds. "Consider it done, Alistair. We'll have our boys pick him up tonight. A little disrespect, a night in the cells, he'll get the message." Vance stops the recording. The silence that follows is absolute. It is the silence of a grave. Every person in the room is staring at Alastair Finch. The reporters are scribbling furiously. The faces in the gallery are a mixture of shock and pure, unadulterated hatred. His own junior associates are looking at the floor, at the ceiling, anywhere but at him. He is no longer a king in his courtroom. He is a specimen pinned to a board. The arresting officers, Patrolman Miller and Davies, are present in this courtroom, are they not? Vance asks, her gaze sweeping the back of the room. Two uniformed officers standing near the wall suddenly look very ill. Miller, a burly man with a thick mustache, begins to sweat profusely. Their report states that Sergeant Major Thorne was acting belligerently, shouting obscenities, and was a threat to public order, Vance says, reading from their report. However, we have canvassed the area. We have spoken to 6 eyewitnesses. All of them state that Sergeant Major Thorne was standing quietly on the sidewalk outside his mother's house when the officers approached him, and that they were the aggressors from the very beginning. We also have security footage from a corner store across the street. She nods to the door. An FBI agent, who had entered unnoticed behind her, steps forward and hands a laptop to the court clerk. The footage shows Officers Miller and Davies shoving Sergeant Major Thorne against their patrol car without provocation. It shows him never raising his hands, never raising his voice. It shows a textbook case of police harassment and a falsified report. Officer Miller makes a choked sound. His partner, Davies, looks like he is about to vomit. Alastair Finch's carefully constructed world has not just crumbled. It has been nuked from orbit. He begins to babble. It is the only thing he has left. This is a setup. A conspiracy. You can't. This is my courtroom. I am the law here, he shrieks, his voice a pathetic, high-pitched whine. He points a trembling finger at Thorne. He did this. He's some kind of deep state plant. Sent to destroy me. Undersecretary Vance looks at him with an expression of profound pity. It is worse than her anger. You are nothing, Mr. Finch, she says quietly. You are a small, corrupt man in a small town who made the fatal mistake of choosing the wrong target. You did not see a soldier. You did not see a citizen. You did not even see a man. You saw a stereotype. A caricature born of your own bigotry. And your blindness will be your ruin. She turns to the 2 FBI agents who have now moved to flank her. Special Agent Harris, you may proceed. The agent nods. He and his partner walk toward the prosecutor's table. They move with a fluid, undeniable purpose. Alastair Finch, Agent Harris says, his voice flat and official, you are under arrest for conspiracy to violate civil rights, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. He pulls out a pair of handcuffs. The metallic click as they open seems to echo off every surface in the room. Finch stares at the cuffs as if they are venomous snakes. No, he whispers. No, you can't. He looks to Judge Wallace for help, for some last-ditch exercise of the authority they once shared. But Wallace is already being approached by the other agent. Judge Howard Wallace, the second agent says, you are also under arrest. A federal grand jury has indicted you on 1 count of conspiracy and 3 counts of accepting bribes. Wallace makes a gurgling sound and slumps in his high-backed chair, his face the color of ash. Finch's composure shatters completely. He is a cornered rat. He shoves his table away, sending papers flying. Get away from me, he screams, his eyes wild. He scrambles backward, tripping over his own chair and sprawling onto the floor in a heap of expensive tailoring and shattered pride. Agent Harris does not flinch. He calmly steps over the fallen chair, grabs Finch by the arm, and hauls him to his feet. He twists Finch's arm behind his back and snaps the first cuff around his wrist. Click. The sound of a world ending. The second cuff. Click. The sound of a cage door slamming shut. The public humiliation is absolute. Alastair Finch, the king, is being handcuffed in the center of his own collapsed kingdom, in front of everyone he had ever lorded his power over. He is crying now, pathetic, gasping sobs of disbelief and terror. As the agents begin to lead him away, past the stunned reporters and the gaping faces in the gallery, he has to pass the defendant's table. For the first time since this ordeal began, Sergeant Major Marcus Thorne stands up. He is not a large man, but he stands with the unshakable solidity of a mountain. He moves with a quiet grace that makes Finch's clumsy panic seem even more pathetic. Finch is forced to stop, to face the men he tried to destroy. Thorne's eyes are still calm, but now they hold something else. Not pity. Not anger. Just a profound, quiet judgment. Thorne reaches up and gently touches the Distinguished Service Cross on his lapel. "You saw a costume," Sergeant Major Thorne says, his voice low and clear, heard by everyone in the now silent room. "You should have seen the uniform." It is the final, devastating blow. A simple statement of fact that cuts Finch to the bone, laying bare the totality of his failure, the depth of his prejudice. Finch lets out a strangled cry as the agents haul him away, a broken man being dragged from the ruins of his life. The fallout is not a storm. It is a cleansing fire. Alastair Finch's trial is a national spectacle. The evidence is so overwhelming, his recorded words so damning, that his high-priced lawyers can do little more than posture. He is convicted on all federal charges. The judge, a stern woman with no tolerance for corruption, sentences him to the maximum. 25 years in a federal penitentiary. No possibility of parole. His assets are seized to pay restitution to the families he and the developer targeted. His law license is not just suspended, it is ceremonially shredded by the State Bar Association. He arrives at Fort Leavenworth, not as a legal titan, but as inmate number 75381. He trades his tailored suits for a drab orange jumpsuit. The former king now spends his days scrubbing floors and his nights listening to the sounds of a world that has utterly forgotten him. Judge Howard Wallace, in a desperate attempt to save himself, cooperates fully with the federal investigation. His testimony implicates a dozen other city officials, from the zoning board to the mayor's office. His cooperation earns him a reduced sentence of 10 years. He is impeached and removed from the bench in disgrace. His portrait is taken down from the courthouse wall, leaving a faded, rectangular ghost of his power. Police Chief Frank O'Malley is fired immediately. He and the arresting officers, Miller and Davies, are indicted on state and federal charges. They lose their jobs, their pensions, and their freedom. Their convictions are swift. Their names become bywords for corruption within the local police force, sparking a complete overhaul of the department from the top down. The real estate developer Finch was colluding with his ruined. Faced with a massive federal racketeering charge, his company collapses. He declares bankruptcy and ends up selling his golf clubs to pay his legal fees. The eviction notice against Mary Thorne is rescinded. The city, under new and humbled leadership, issues a formal, public apology and pays her a substantial settlement for the harassment she and her son endured. Her home is safe. For the heroes, the world changes in a different way. All charges against Sergeant Major Marcus Thorne are, of course, dropped. He receives a personal apology from the Attorney General of the United States. The story of his quiet dignity in the face of such vile bigotry becomes a national news story. He is hailed as a hero twice over. The Army, recognizing his unique character and leadership, offers him a position at West Point as a senior enlisted advisor, a role where he can mold the next generation of officers. He accepts. He finds a new purpose, not on the battlefield, but in the classroom, teaching young cadets about honor, integrity, and the true meaning of service. Sarah Jenkins, the overwhelmed public defender, becomes an overnight sensation in the legal world. Her steadfast, if initially shaky, defense of Thorne in the face of overwhelming pressure earns her widespread admiration. She is flooded with job offers. She turns them all down until she gets a call from a civil rights law firm in Washington, D.C., a firm funded by a quiet foundation with deep ties to one Eleanor Vance. Sarah accepts. She moves to the Capitol and becomes a fierce, brilliant advocate for the underdog, her voice no longer trembling, but ringing with the conviction of someone who has stared down a tyrant and won. The systemic change is the most profound victory of all. The federal investigation sparked by Finch's arrest uncovers decades of rot in the city's judicial system. Dozens of wrongful convictions, primarily of poor and minority defendants railroaded by Finch, are overturned. Men and women who had lost years of their lives are set free. To ensure this can never happen again, Sergeant Major Thorne, with the help of Undersecretary Vance and a consortium of legal charities, establishes a new nonprofit. They call it the Thorne Initiative. Its mission is simple, to provide top-tier legal defense for veterans and ordinary citizens who are being targeted by corrupt systems of power. It becomes a beacon of hope, a nationwide organization that fights for the voiceless, funded by anonymous donations from people who believe in justice. 2 years later. The lecture hall at the United States Military Academy at West Point is packed. The cadets, in their crisp gray uniforms, sit in rapt attention. The autumn light streams through the tall, arched windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. At the podium stands a man in a perfectly tailored blue suit. He wears no medals today, but he does not need them. His presence is enough. Sergeant Major Marcus Thorne, retired, looks out at the faces of the future leaders of the Army. In the front row, a visitor smiles. Sarah Jenkins, now a partner at her firm, is here as a guest lecturer for a seminar on military law. She watches her former client, now her friend, and marvels at the journey. Honor, Thorne says, his voice calm and steady, filling the vast hall, is not a thing you are given. It is not a medal you can pin to your chest. It is a choice. It is the choice you make when no one is watching. It is the choice you make when the pressure is on, when you are tired, when you are afraid. He pauses, his eyes scanning the young, eager faces before him. There are men in this world who confuse power with authority. They confuse arrogance with strength. They build kingdoms of fear and intimidation, and they believe their walls are impenetrable. Men like Alastair Finch. He says the name without malice. It is simply a fact. A lesson. A man like that looks at the world and sees only tools and obstacles. He sees symbols, not substance. He sees a cheap suit, not the men inside it. He sees a piece of metal, not the sacrifice it represents. His prejudice is a pair of blinders. It makes him incapable of seeing the truth right in front of him. Thorne leans forward slightly, his voice becoming more personal, more intense. Your greatest weapon as a leader will not be your rifle. It will not be your rank. It will be your character. It will be your ability to see the humanity and the honor in every single person you lead, and every person you serve. Because if you cannot see their honor, you will surely lose your own. He straightens up, a faint smile touching his lips. Arrogance is a fortress with no foundation. It looks impressive, but the first push of truth brings it all down. Never forget that. The men and women who believe they are untouchable are always the first to be broken. He concludes his lecture. The hall erupts in a thunderous, sustained applause. It is a sound of respect. A sound of understanding. A sound of justice. As the cadets give him a standing ovation, Marcus Thorne catches Sarah's eye, and he gives her a small, grateful nod. The battle in that forgotten courtroom is long over, but the war for what is right, for what is honorable, continues every day. And they are both still on the front lines.